Good evening, viewers and listeners of Concerned Citizens Media. Thank you for joining me again. I always appreciate your participation on, Concerned Citizens Media broadcasting. Thank you again. Today is February the 16th, 2022. Welcome back. So I just stopped by to share some news. The first one is the No More Group, hashtag No More Group, organized by mostly by the DC task force, and others will be in DC from Virginia, uh, other surrounding. They will be in Washington D.C. in front of State Department and the White House to protest uh, the bill HR 6600. So these are pro-Abiy group, not happy the direction that bill heading. So they want to raise the concern. They are defending Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed because this bill, if it passes the final stage, it will be a blow to his government. So they are now organizing a protest to be carried out on Thursday, February 17, 2022, in Washington, D.C. So we will see what impact will have. This group also try to raise awareness, claiming the genocide happened in Oromia on Amharas. So, but the evidence is clear. Oromos are suffering because of the cross-border attack by Fannos and the Amhara militia in coordination with even the federal government. So Oromos are suffering severely under Abiy Ahmed leadership. No protection at all. Their houses are burned while even the people are inside. Too much destruction, and the life lost is uncountable, especially in East and West Wallaga. So now they try to claim Amharas are the ones suffering and not the Oromos. So they try to raise awareness for Amharas, claiming Amharas are suffering the genocide in Oromia. So that's the evidence on the ground is not supporting it, not supporting it. Even the last week, there was a propaganda like 168 Amharas killed and buried in a mass grave, but nothing was found. So this group is trying to cover it up, the atrocities happening in Wallaga, especially East and West Wallaga, and other Oromia regions by uh, expansionist Fannos and Amhara militia. So, being said that, let's continue with other news. The Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is also in Brussels, the capital of Belgium, for EU AU summit, and even tweeted the following: Abiy Ahmed Ali, happy to meet my friend President Charles Michel before the EU AU summit. We had a fruitful discussion about EU Ethiopia relations as well as regional and continental issues of mutual significance. So he is tweeting about his meeting with Charles, President Charles. He is the president of European Council. So he is in Brussels now. Okay, a massacre in plain sight behind silent killings in Oromo Special Zone Amhara region. I also reported on this one, the crime committed in on Oromos in Oromo Special Zone Wollo area in Amhara region, especially after TPLF controlled the area with oil, then withdraw. So now they are suffering the revenge. Let's read what this report says. The killing of civilians in the Oromo zone of the Amhara region continued long after the area was reclaimed by government forces in December last year, report said. Addis Standard's week-long investigation revealed that the residents of the zone were subjected to mass killing and imprisonment at the hands of the government security forces. Although the local administration insists that the practices were measures taken against terrorist groups, the killing of civilians continue until the present, while the government is readying to hold a national dialogue, including with TPLF. According to sources on the ground, thousands of people were incarcerated and hundreds of people, including those under custody, were summarily executed by government forces. Addis Standard received videos and pictures of bodies piled in a pit claimed to be of residents of the zone from several woredas. Segni Hassan, a resident of the zone who spoke to Addis Standard during the first weeks the area fell under the control of the government forces, said upon entering the area, they executed several people at random. The execution site was guarded by security forces, preventing us from collecting bodies. He continued, we don't know the exact number of people. About 4 weeks later, they collected the bodies with bulldozer and buried them in a mass grave. Segni stated that mass arrests were getting more intense, promoting security forces to use government institutions, schools, and private compounds as makeshift detention centers. Some were taken to Shoa Robit town in the North Shoa zone, while others were taken to a military camp in the Oromia region, according to him. Most of the detainees were accused of supporting the TPLF and OLA capture the area. Some were even asked why they didn't flee when Tigrayan forces arrived. That was their crime, he recounted. Another witness, a resident of Bate town, whose brother was killed by local militia, explained that government forces go from house to house, arresting individuals, then take them to other areas to kill them. He further stated that his brother never got involved in politics, but he was accused of supporting Shane, the government's reference to Oromo Liberation Army. They took him and many others to an area called Warra Bahu and executed them, he said. He also disclosed that the local militia asked for ransom after arbitrarily arresting residents. If one does not pay the amount they asked for, they are reported as a member of Shane. Once someone is reported, they are never heard back from. They disappear, he illustrated. Jile Umuga, Artuma Farsi, Chaffa Dawa and the Chaffa Rabbit Waradas in the Wallo zone saw a series of mass executions according to residents. Zarihun, name changed for security reason, is a resident of Sanbete, a market town that is 7 kilometers from Ataye. He said 28 people were summarily executed in a place called Inatile alone. The execution is carried out on the side of the road. Bodies are left out in the open for days as warning, he added. He added up to 8 family members of an alleged OLA members were deemed guilty by association. A 13-year-old boy was beaten to death because his father was allegedly a member of OLA. The Sanbate town resident explained that the arrests targeted respected and wealthy ethnic Oromos in the town. It is almost as though they want to rid the town of Oromos, he speculated. Once you are under arrest, you are either detained or killed without confirming whether or not you are affiliated with OLA. A lot of families don't know whether their loved ones are dead or alive. Tension runs high in the Oromo zone and the residents fear speaking with the media. Bekele, name changed for security reasons, said, I fear that they might tap this phone conversation and kill me while talking about mass arrest and a summary execution. A lot of people don't know where their loved ones are detained. Days later, they find their bodies on the street. Bekele said, I can't go into further details for fear for my life. History will unearth these stories someday. The administrator of Jillet Umuga Warada, Ahmed Mohammed, insists that government forces were only carrying out law enforcement operations by arresting those who are affiliated with TPLF and OLA. To my knowledge, not a single person was shot at, he asserted. The Warada administrator also underlined that the arrests were made based on sufficient evidence and that family visitation was allowed. In contrast to the Warada administrator statement, Ahmed Ali, the zonal administrator, said that the zonal administration established an investigative committee on a zonal and Warada level to identify the detainees one by one. Those who committed serious crimes were since brought to the court of law, while those who committed less serious crimes received rehabilitation training and released, he said. However, the resident of the zone stated that the arrests and executions continue well into 2022. Muhammad Hassan, a resident of Artuma Farsi Warada, who spoke to Addis Standard by phone in January, said, my neighbor was shot by government forces. He explained that his neighbor was shot while he was working on his farm. I have lost many people, friends, family, and neighbors like this. I don't know how long we will continue like this, he said. The residents of the Oromo zone were caught in crossfire during the conflict between the Ethiopian National Defense Force and the Tigrayan forces loyal to the Tigray People Liberation Front, TPLF, in November last year. Residents of the zone who spoke to Addis Standard at the time talked about the intensity of the fighting, including airstrikes, as well as the involvement of many armed wings consisting of armed groups, militia, special forces, and Ethiopian National Defense Force. Addis Standard was able to confirm that the crackdown on civilians is still ongoing. So that is the condition the Oromos living in Wallo area in Oromo special zone under the control of Amhara region suffering. That is atrocities carried out by Fano and the Amhara militia in coordination with regional and federal government. So that is, it has been reported even before this report. Many media, even I reported on this one. Fanos and the Amhara militias are carrying out mass killings in Oromo special zone under Amhara region control. Even now they are crossing to Wallaga and other areas committing a serious crime. Who's going to control it? Nobody. The regional government knows it. The federal government knows it. And even this report says they take them from that area and take them into Oromia region. That means the Oromia region also knows about this crime. So it's not only the Amhara region, and it's not only Fano or Amhara militia carrying out these crimes. This is a coordinated attack. This is a coordinated genocide attack against Oromos, especially in Oromo special zone in Amhara region. So I don't know what to do except reporting to you, to my listeners and the international community, US, European Union, United Nations, or Amnesty International, to be aware of this serious crime happening in Amhara region. Ethiopia Rights Commission, US government call for immediate release of all civilians detained under emergency decree. Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, EHRC, and US government welcomed the 15 February lifting by the Ethiopian Parliament of the wartime state of emergency, which was put in place since early November last year. However, both called on the immediate release of all civilians detained under the emergency proclamation. Considering its impact on human rights, the Commission noted positively the decision to lift the state of emergency, which has been in place since 2nd of November. The Commission reiterated its call for the immediate release of those arrested in connection with the implementation of the proclamation, EHRC said in a statement. In addition to its call for the immediate release of detainees, Ethiopia Human Rights Commission also expressed concerns that the people who were arrested during the state of emergency were exposed to various social and economic problems, including the inability to return to work due to lack of confirmation of their detention. Ethiopia Human Rights Commission cautioned authorities to expedite the issuance of evidence of detention and other necessary documents to enable the people to return to their normal lives. Similarly, the United States government hailed the decision as another important step by the government of Ethiopia to pave the way for a peaceful resolution of the ongoing conflict, but urged the move to be immediately followed by the release of all individuals arrested or detained without charge under the state of emergency. The end of this detention will facilitate an inclusive and productive national dialogue. The United States continues to engage with all parties to advance an immediate cessation of hostilities, unhindered humanitarian access, transparent investigations into all human rights abuses and violations, and a negotiated resolution to the conflict, a statement from US State Department said. A report in December released by Amnesty International said that ethnic Tigrayans, including children and elderly, were targeted for arbitrary arrests and mass detentions after the state of emergency was enacted earlier in November. Most detainees are being held without charge or access to a lawyer in facilities including school compounds, fenced plots in various parts of the country, including the outskirts of the capital, Addis Ababa. So that is the condition we are facing. Ethiopians are facing under this prime minister who came to power promising a lot of things and welcomed with glory and now turned a dictator, the worst dictator, who arrest people based on their ethnicity, not because of they committed a crime, but because they are from Tigrayans or because they are from Oromia region, just by blaming them supporter of TPLF or OLA. That's it. That's a crime. Without no proof, no court system in Ethiopia. No court. Even those freed under the court system, just rearrested by his order. So law in order is broken, as I reported multiple times. It's horrible condition under Prime Minister Abiy. And they are now working on national dialogue. I don't know what the benefit of having national dialogue with a dictator, with the criminals. Okay, this is from Russian, on Russia Duma, Russia Parliament, that's Duma, resolution on Eastern Ukraine. This is press statement from US State Department. The Russian Duma has stated that it plans to send to President Putin an appeal to recognize the so-called Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic as independent. To be clear, Kremlin approval of this appeal would amount to the Russian government's wholesale rejection of its commitment under the Minsk agreements, which outline the process for the full political, social, and economic reintegration of those parts of Ukraine's Donbas region controlled by Russian-led forces and political proxies since 2014. Enactment of this resolution would further undermine Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, constitute a gross violation of international law, call into further question Russia's state commitment to continue to engage in diplomacy to achieve a peaceful resolution of this crisis, and necessitate a swift and firm response from the United States in full coordination with our allies and partners. So that's a very serious warning for Russia, Vladimir Putin, if they recognize this part as Russian region. So thank you. That's all I have on reading, but I have some videos to share with you from different media. Thank you again. Let's listen. And the first one is the report came out from Amnesty International organization blaming or accusing the TDF committing killings, mass killing, sexual assaults, and other property looting. So it's now before Eritreans, Amhara militia, Amhara Fanos, the Ethiopian Defense Forces were accused of this grave violation on Tigrayans. Now this is Amnesty said, interviewed so many people, and now they are releasing this report accusing TDF committing the same horrible crime in Amhara region. Let's listen, and some other videos will continue. Okay.
Rights group Amnesty International has said Tigrayan fighters deliberately killed civilians and gang-raped dozens of women and underage girls in 2 towns in Ethiopia's Amhara region last year. The disclosure was published in the report on Wednesday by the rights group in what it described as the latest example of the horrific toll exacted by the 15-month-old war. The rights watchdog interviewed 30 rape survivors, some as young as 14, and other victims of violence to draw a picture of the atrocities in Chena and Kubo in August and September after rebels from the TPLF seized control of the towns. Nearly half the victims of sexual violence said they were gang-raped, with doctors telling Amnesty that some survivors had suffered lacerations, likely caused by rifle bayonets being inserted into their genitals. The war in northern Ethiopia has been punctuated by accounts of massacres and mass rapes, with thousands of people killed and hundreds of thousands on the brink of starvation. A joint investigation by UN's Right Chief Michelle Bachelet's office and the government-affiliated Ethiopian Human Rights Commission found evidence of serious abuses.
So that is accusation or a report. Okay, that's advertisement. You can't even.
Fist bump diplomacy as defense chiefs from NATO countries, including the US and Germany, arrive at alliance headquarters to strengthen their stance on Russia and pore over the latest intelligence. And this is what they've been looking at. A Russian Defense Ministry video claiming to show a partial pullback of forces from near Ukraine. The Kremlin says combat equipment and troops were leaving the Crimean Peninsula seized from Kiev in 2014 and returning to base. But NATO Secretary General was quick to dismiss any talk of a de-escalation of tensions.
We have heard the signs from Moscow about readiness to continue diplomatic efforts. But so far, we have not seen any de-escalation on the ground. On the contrary, it appears that Russia continues the military build-up.
Strong words, too, from European Union chiefs in Strasbourg, urging Moscow to come to the negotiating table.
The choice today is between war and tragic sacrifices that would go along with it, or the courage of a political engagement, the courage of a diplomatic negotiation. Very clearly, the European Union chooses diplomacy and chooses negotiation. We will demonstrate this courage.
There was little sign of any Russian troop withdrawals in Belarus on Wednesday. This, another show of military muscle for the cameras. Joint exercises with Belarusian troops only deepening fears in neighbouring Ukraine that an invasion's imminent. On the land and in the air, NATO says Russia has reached full combat readiness. But there is a shred of hope. In recent days, Russia has signalled that it would be willing to join talks. That door remains open. Do too much and NATO runs the risk of being drawn into a long, protracted standoff with Russia. Do too little, and it runs the risk of a possible invasion in Ukraine, something that could destabilize the whole of Europe. Russia is creating a new normal, said Stoltenberg, by using force to contest the principle of sovereignty in Europe. The alliance, he said, must respond possibly with a new NATO battle group in Romania. The hope of an easy end to this standoff is fast fading. Neve Barker, Al Jazeera, Brussels.
Well, we have two correspondents covering developments this hour. In a moment, we'll go to our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, in Washington. But first to Natasha Butler, who's monitoring reaction from Ukraine's capital, Kiev. Natasha, as this NATO defense ministers was being held in Brussels today, Ukraine was holding a day of national unity, a so-called day of national unity, and the president has been speaking about it. Tell us more. Yes, Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, saying that Ukrainians are strong, that they are ready to defend themselves, that they are ready to fight. Fight, he says, whether it's February the 16th, 17th, 18th, April or September. Now, Zelensky was talking from the port city of Mariupol in the southeast of the country, very close to the front line where Ukrainian forces have been fighting Russian-backed separatists now for nearly 8 years. So it was a highly symbolic choice of location. And this is the day that Zelensky has called a day of unity in Ukraine. He called for this a couple of days ago. The idea is to try and rally some patriotism, to try and send a message to Moscow that Ukrainians are united, that they would fight if they were attacked. And he chose this date of February 16th, a significant date. It's not a date chosen by chance, but it's the day that some Western intelligence sources said that Russia could begin an invasion. And so what has Ukraine been saying as far as Russia's claims that it's been withdrawing some of its troops, including from Crimea? What's their assessment of Russian troop movements? Well, Zelensky also touched on that earlier in the day. He said, look, show us the proof, show us the evidence. He says he has not seen any evidence at all that Russia is drawing down any of its troops on Ukraine's border. And we know that is the same sentiment that we have heard from other Western allies, that they simply haven't seen the evidence. The foreign minister here in Ukraine has said, look, this seems very much along the lines of what we've seen before from Russia, that they say one thing, but they actually do another. However, the foreign minister did say that if there was to be any form of drawdown, then that would be certainly welcomed as a sign of de-escalation from Moscow. It would be seen as a sign that the diplomacy is perhaps working. In the meantime, I should say as well, the Ukrainian government has also commented on these huge cyber attacks that took place on Tuesday night here. Cyber attacks that the government said targeted two major state banks, the websites of the Defense Force and the Army. Huge attacks, they said, on a scale they'd not seen before, even though they didn't damage any infrastructure, just the web pages. Ukraine's president, again, Zelensky, said when it comes to those cyber attacks that the government here believes that foreign forces are behind those attacks. He is not pointing the finger at anyone in particular or naming them. But again, Western intelligence has said in the past that Russia could use cyber warfare against Ukraine. Natasha, thank you for the update. Natasha Butler is our correspondent in Kiev there. Let's now go to our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett in Washington, D.C. Kimberly, where do things stand as far as the White House is concerned?
Well, fresh warnings of potential cyber warfare in the United States as well from the FBI, the National Security Agency, warning particularly defense contractors to be wary of potential attacks, particularly when it comes to not only military plans, internal communications, and even the intentions in terms of strategy and so on. This is something that has been put out as an alert in the last couple of hours. And in terms of those claims by Russia of a drawdown, the U.S. Secretary of State saying that the intelligence that has been seen by the United States indicates just the opposite. In fact, they report that they are seeing more bolstering of Russian forces along the border with Ukraine, not less. So to that end, given the fact that there is this belief that there is still a window of a potential for an imminent invasion, the U.S. President Joe Biden will be holding a consultation telephone call as they continue to coordinate closely with allies. That phone call will be with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and that will be taking place at 19:30 GMT. Why is this important? Because the German Chancellor was meeting in Moscow just 24 hours ago with Vladimir Putin. So in the effort to try and continue to try and de-escalate, something the U.S. President says is a primary goal, he is working with his allies at the same time, preparing for any eventuality, including a Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Kimberly, thank you for that. Kimberly Halkett live at the White House.
Okay. So that's the video I want to share with you. I hope this tension with NATO and Russia on Ukraine issue I hope it will be resolved peacefully. So Vladimir Putin threatened to use force, and no result of their negotiation or on phone conversation with Vladimir Putin. So he's still sending forces in more than 100,000 on the border area very close to Ukraine. Ukraine is also preparing to fight Russia. NATO is also helping. So it's a very serious situation. We are watching it. I hope it will cool down for the sake of humanity. I hope Russian president recalculate his, I don't know what he is attempting to do. I know his fear of NATO's presence around the corner. I hope they will negotiate it out so he can be in power for many years. So I repeat the one, the hashtag no more group planned protest in DC. I hope this group will face counter protest because they are try to cover up what is happening, as I said, on Oromos, even in their region. They don't want to talk about. That's a massacre. That's a genocide. That's a genocide. And those Fanos and Amhara militias are armed by Amhara region, even supported by Oromia region, by federal government. Even last week or so, Oromia region, provided $100 million to that region to arm the Fanos and the Amhara militia, so they can come cross into Oromia region, into Walega and Benishangul, even into Somalia region now, so they can be stronger and conduct their, atrocities against others to create the Ethiopia they are looking for. One flag, one language, probably one religion, but nobody will accept it, such situation anymore in that country. But they are still dreaming. The Menelik Brigade, the Theodros Brigade, they are heavily armed, heavily financed, including here from the diaspora community. So now they are demonstrating, claiming Amhara genocide, but the Amharas, the one committing the genocide, even in their own region against Oromos. That's all I'm going to say for today. And I will be back with other news and updates. So long, everyone, and be safe.